This is Talk Radio.
Keeping you up to date across the UK. Online, on DAB+, and on the Talk Radio app.
Rob Rinder on Talk Radio.
Good evening, this is Rob Rinder. I'm on Talk Radio. It's drive time, and now it's our happy point of the week as we have our postcard from America from the one and only Professor John Christopher Buer, as we like to call him, Prof. JC, White House correspondent at Real Political News. Prof. JC, a lot to get through. First of all, lovely to speak to you and see you today. I'm going to ask if we can, Prof. JC, to talk about something that really people may not have been following. It's about a trial that's taking place in America of a young man called Kyle Rittenhouse, and it seems to have become a political trial. Can you explain why it's important and what's going on?
Well, it seems like the O.J. Simpson trial has come back in another form. Mm-hmm. It's basically wall-to-wall Kyle Rittenhouse, and it's given the extreme right-wing gun-toting people, the NRA, some a poster boy.
Prof. JC, can I just set it out for our listeners, because they may not know? What happened was there was a lot of political unrest in Kenosha. People have seen the scenes last year. This young man goes down to that town. The reasons of why he went there are disputed. He went along with a firearm. I should be clear, in this country, if he went along with a firearm, he would be serving 5 years in prison, do not pass go. That's the British gun laws. I make no comment about that in America. You have a strong Second Amendment, which protects his right to do that. In the course of his time down there, it was alleged that he chased and shot 3 people, 2 of whom died. And he's been put on trial, for causing those deaths. In the course of the trial, it seems to have emerged, and this was always his defense, based upon the CCTV and some of the state's witnesses, that he was acting in self-defense. Now, the real political issue appears to be that a number of the protesters were, left-wing protesters or joining left-wing protest movements. So this has become a real political hotbed. One of the things that I don't understand, and I have to say troubles me, is that in this country, prosecutions are taking place at arm's length from government. In other words, they're always done fairly and squarely, or we try to. This seems to have become a real political prosecution. Whatever you think of the politics of Kyle Rittenhouse, on the face of the facts as they've emerged, even in the course of the prosecution case, he does seem to have been acting in self-defense, doesn't he? So why is he still on trial?
Because he murdered 2 people and injured severely another one. And he came across with his AR-15, which is a very, very, very wicked weapon.
To say the least.
It's accurate at 600 meters.
Wow.
And there are people dead. And you can get into, and you're a jurist, you're a judge, you understand evidence, and each case, each individual has a separate ruling, I would imagine. But the fact is that, there's intent involved, and I'm not, like you, an attorney, but the politics to me is that he has become the poster boy for those vigilante types in America who thinks that there is no constitution, there is no law, and you can willy-nilly cross state lines, take a deadly weapon, and protect a garage. That's why he went there. And his excuse for going is something that may not be final, but the judge, we'll see what happens on Monday when the judge comes up with his opinion. But he's been quite a character himself.
He's been getting very cross with the prosecution. Sadly, we can't talk about this all afternoon. Boy, do I want to come across the pond and have a drink with you and talk about this. But the next thing we have to get to is your favourite man of the hour. I say very ironically, and you're one of the few Americans that certainly gets irony. Trump wins a victory. He's got a temporary victory in his effort to keep his White House records secret. A good day or a sad day for presidential immunity and for your great democracy?
Well, we don't know, because he didn't like the judgment that that Judge Tanya Chutkan held, and that Trump is not a king. He is not a privileged citizen. It is not about presidential privilege. So he didn't like that. So he went to the Court of Appeals.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens with the Court of Appeals? You know this. It's on a rotation basis, and Donald Trump once again opened the doors of hell for himself, because instead of getting someone that might be sympathetic, his appeal court judges are 2 Obama appointees and a Biden appointee.
Mm-hmm.
So this may be a temporary hold, but there is a hearing coming up on the 30th of this month, and then we'll see what happens there. And if he goes to the Supreme Court, he cannot be guaranteed either, because many of these justices, including some that he appointed, are strict constitutionalists.
Yeah, certainly Amy Coney Barrett is certainly the case. Neil Gorsuch, absolutely, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Now, there's a big, as you've probably seen, what's happening at the moment on the Belarus-Polish border. I mean, sort of shades of frightening 1939. It's unbelievable to watch. And the White House has warned European allies to prepare for a Russian invasion of the Ukraine. If that was to happen, Prof. JC, what do you think the responsibility and role of the USA should be?
Well, I think the real president, Biden, may be very trepidatious to commit more troops after 20 years of troops in Afghanistan. And look what happened when you withdrew from there. The Taliban is raging and has taken over. It's a criminal situation. Yeah. And we see little babies literally freezing to death on the border. They are in no man's land there between Belarus and Poland. And the Belarus dictator is making hay of this. Mm-hmm. And Putin, of course, always wins because he controls the gas pipeline. And he's sitting on the largest gas reserve anywhere, which I believe the Europeans get 20% of their energy from these pipelines going through Belarus and Poland. And, whatever happens on the eastern Ukraine, he's already invaded Crimea. So he'll do whatever he wants to do, willy-nilly. And who'll stand up with him?
Well, that's a good question, Prof. JC. Prof. JC, that's a really good question. And it's a critical one. Whatever you think of the role of the US, whether they're force for good or bad, I happen to believe you're still a light on the hill and a force for good. I remember Margaret Thatcher saying the thing about dictators is they can't be appeased, they must be beaten. The dictator of Belarus has been in power since 1994. Just to give you a sense of it, it'll be true of your students as well, Prof. JC. That's longer than any of my producers have been alive, and it's on European soil, this dictatorship. Isn't it time that America stood up to that dictatorship?
Alone. America has its own issues. We have our own gasoline and inflation issues.
Right.
We are supplying our European allies perhaps with the oil and gas. But the real problem is Vladimir Putin is winning this war. He's won the war, and he's put in Trump twice. I'd be very careful what goes on in the UK, because Putin has his hands in anything, and he really has his hands in your thermostats, because he has the oil that goes into heating Europe, and I assume the United Kingdom as well. You would know better than I do.
I would, but Prof. JC, some Trumpists, for want of a better way of putting them, might say to you, well, you were moving towards energy self-sufficiency, and hasn't the Biden administration moved away from that? Isn't that one of the problems?
Well, we saw the results of COP26 today. No one's very pleased with the results of that. And I don't think that we have had immediate changes. I don't think America is going on solar tomorrow or wind. We still have gas. We still have to buy gasoline. We still have to get our gasoline and petrol from Oklahoma and from Texas, and we have to produce that. And I think that's something we're not off, and we're not going to be off it for quite some time.
One of the issues
he has weakened the West. He has weakened the West, and he is taking advantage of everything he possibly can.
Well, you and I would disagree about it in this way. He's certainly used insidious tactics and is part of a number of factors that have weakened the West, but it takes two to tango. And part of the response is for the West to get its act together and to get stronger in its response in a number of ways. One of those responses is to insist on the things and the values that we in the West share, that we believe, if not should be modelled on the world, we certainly believe ourselves. On that nature, or in that vein rather, in COP26 is a good example of that. China didn't show up to the party, neither did the world's bigger polluters, but there was a US-China joint statement and a deal. What do you think of that deal, and what's its effect and meaning for the world?
Well, let's find out, because Biden and Xi are going to have a virtual meeting on Monday. Xi hasn't left the country since COVID, and there is a lot of damage that needs to be repaired between the two countries. And I think here's what you really have to understand. I lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis, and JFK gave Khrushchev a way out. He gave him some breathing room, and there was an intelligent negotiation and discussion. And we were on the brink of a nuclear war. We are on the brink of a nuclear war again. Let's not forget that. The Soviets, the former Soviets, Putin, the Chinese, Kim Jong-un, they all have nuclear weapons. And one ridiculous move by either of us, and with the president not having the full support of NATO, we're on a hair trigger. So I think diplomacy is important, discussions and talks are important, and I think we should keep our heads, but remember that the aggressor here is Vladimir Putin, and he is relentless.
As ever, it is very, very enlightening, to say the least, to listen to you, Prof. JC. I have to say, you've caused a lot of people to write in about the Rittenhouse trial. I feel very, very strongly about it. Whatever your view of that young man and his intentions or otherwise, it does seem increasingly that the original narrative that was sold to people about what he did is not sustainable. And the fact that a prosecution that has to be conducted fairly continued nevertheless is something that we should always be troubled about. Certainly one that's brought under the auspices of a democracy, because where there is no justice, there is no democracy, and it's certainly worth following that trial if you're interested, and you should be. This is Rob Rinder. After the break, we've got Cocktail Hour with Sarah Willingham, Dragon's Den, aficionado, genius. She is like the shiny-haired goddess. Wait till you see her and hear from her. I have to tell you, you're going to learn a great deal. I'm with you until 7 o'clock. This is Rob Rinder, and you're listening to Talk Radio.
On DAB and on the Talk Radio app. Talk Radio.